Very good morning, students. I am Patel. Welcome you to study from home. Today I am going to explain you Noor Jahan's influence in Jahangir's court. And this is the topic of chapter Mughal Empire, chapter number 4, class 7, social science, history. Now, Mehmun Nisa married Emperor Jahangir in 1611 and received title Noor Jahan. So her original name was Mehmun Nisa. She remained extremely loyal and supportive to the monarch. Okay, so as I told you that this Mughal, how Mughal, just because of their administrative system, they are nobles in their court, where they are very intelligent and intellectual. So Noor Jahan also, Miss Mehmun Nisa also loyal as well as supportive to the monarch. As a mark of honor, Jahangir struck silver coin bearing his own title on one side and on the other the inscription struck in the name of Queen Begum Noor Jahan. Okay, so he issued a coin. Okay, why this Jahangir issued coin? To give her respect, as she was a very loyal to monarch. So she struck the name of the Queen Begum Noor Jahan. Okay. The adjoining document is an another of Noor Jahan. This sequence seal states command of her most sublime and elevated Majesty Noor Jahan, Parsa Begum. The noun seal state by the son of Shah Jahan, she became as a brilliant as a moon. May Noor Jahan Parsa be the lady of the age. So this all document praise about Queen Noor Jahan, right? And this document told about her loyalty, her dedication toward the Mughal Empire, right? Now we are already complete this topic. Now I am going to start this Mughal Empire in the 17th century and after. So what was the condition of Mughal Empire in the 17th century and after that? Okay, how they faced or what kind of problems they had, and how the downfall of Mughal Empire began, right? Because 17th century was a starting or beginning of decline of Mughal Empire. Now the administrative and military efficiency of Mughal Empire led to the great economic and commercial prosperity, right? As I told you, there are very sharp in administrative system. So that the administrative system of Mughal Empire lead a great economical and commercial prosperity. When peasants, farmers were very happy, they were very prosperous, as well as traders, business person. Why they were happy and prosperous in Mughal era? Because they need not to pay tax if their crops fail, or trader or business person need not to pay more tax when their business got spoiled and their profit got down. Right? That's why we were very happy with this Mughal emperors, as well as they were very prosperous. Okay, in terms of economical condition. International travel described it as a fable land of wealth, right? So we can say to settle in India during Mughal Empire was dream of each and every person. It is known as a golden bird, situation. India was very strong during Mughal Empire, right? Because there was social justice, there were economical justice, right? As I told you, how they maintain social and economical justice. For example, I told you that price of grocery item everywhere same, right? Whether you buy it from Delhi or whether you buy it from Gujarat or Madhya Pradesh or wherever, it was the same, right? And that is how Mughal control the prices, right? But these same visitors also appall at the state of poverty that exists side by side with the greatest opulence. Now, why this poverty rise? Just because their commander or their subedars use their power arbitrarily in the name of Mughal Emperor or in the name of Mughal, and sometimes they provoke the farmer to launch rebel against the Mughal, and somehow they declare them, this nobles and commander declare their area as a separate kingdom. That's why that was the reason of poverty as well as downfall of Mughal Empire. The inequalities were glaring. Documents from the 20th year of Shah Jahan's reign inform us that the highest ranking Mansabdars were only 444 in a number out of total 8,000. Why this numbers were decreasing? Just because of this Mansabdar, the commander declared their land as a separate kingdom. That's why the numbers are decreasing day by day. Okay, these small numbers, mere 5.6% of the total number of the Mansabdar, received 61.5% of the total estimated revenue of the empire as a salary from themselves and their crops. So, income was also decreased, right? The Mughal Empire and their Mansabdar spent a great deal of their income on salary and goods. This expenditure benefited the artisan and peasantry who supplied them with the good and produce. But the scale of revenue collection left very little for investment in the hands of primary producers. Right? The numbers of tax income have been reduced. So that was a problem that they could not invest in goods and produce, primary producers, right? For a peasant, after the 1620 or late 17th century or middle 17th century, they couldn't invest in primary producers, the peasant and the artisan, right? Those who conduct the agriculture activity. The poorest among them live from hand to mouth, and they could hardly consider investing in additional resource. Hand to mouth means they could earn very less. They couldn't save any money at the end of month. All whatever they earn, that would finish in a groceries item and daily item. So hardly they could save at the end of month and invest in additional resource, tools and supply, like to increase the productivity, right? They could not update their tools for agriculture activity, for artists, for making pots and art craft. That's why they couldn't economically be a strong, or they could not economically develop, just because their So condition were like, rich become a more rich and poor become a more poor. In fact, these days we are, facing, we observe that, rich become very rich. Businessmen can, grow and expand their business from state to, from one state to another, from one country to another country, right? And poor become a poor. Why? These are just because of, some strategies. So even these days, rich become a rich and poor become a poor. So comparatively, we should say that conditions are same, right? Our rulers have been changed, but condition is same, right? Before 1,000 years, situation was that even after that situation was same. The enormous wealth and resources commanded by the Mughal elite model them as an extremely powerful group of people in the late 17th century. Elite means important, powerful person, right? So it is known as an elite. So the commanded by Mughal elite made an extreme powerful group of people. So they used their power in an arbitrary way, right? As the authority of Mughal emperor slowly declined, his servant emerged as a powerful center of power in the region. Means they themselves administrate the region and they don't report. They didn't report to their emperor, Mughal emperor, right? They constitute new dynasties and held command of provinces like Hyderabad and Awadh. Although they continue to recognize the Mughal emperor in Delhi as their master. So later they use just name of Mughal, right? But they constituted a new dynasty in the name of Mughal emperor and continue there to recognize themselves as a Mughal emperor in Delhi as their master. By the 18th century, the provinces of the empire had consolidated their independent political identities. Right? So initially they used the Mughal, the name of that Mughal, and continue to rule the area. But later they declare their own provinces. Now here we have topic kings and queens. There are several great monarchs, all near contemporaries in a different part of the world in the 16th century. This includes the ruler of Ottoman Turkey, Sultan Suleiman from 1520 to 1566. During his rule, the Ottoman state expanded into Europe, seizing Hungary and besieging Austria. His army also seized Baghdad and Iraq. So this Ottoman Empire was a parallel to Mughal Empire, right? And in the Asia, Mughal rule. Okay, the administrative system was governed by Mughal, and in Turkey, in Europe, this Ottoman Empire. Okay. Suleiman also reconstructed the Ottoman navy. It is its domination over the Eastern Mediterranean brought the navy into a competition with Spain. In the Arabian Sea, it challenged the Portuguese. The monarch was given the title of Al-Qawni, the lawgiver, because of the large number of the regulation passed during this region. These were aimed to standardize administrative procedure throughout the expanding domains of empire and specifically to protect the peasantry from forced labor. Okay. forced labor, and extraordinary taxes. Later in the 17th century, when public order declined in the Ottoman domain, the region of Suleiman Koni was remembered as a period of idle government. Let me summarize this. They regulate the forced labor, right? And extraordinary taxes. They reduce all this social evil of forced labor, taxes, more taxes on peasants. But after the decline of all the Ottoman Empire, there was a period of idle governance. Now one can only imagine about this Ottoman Empire. It won't be applicable, right? So that's why it is known as an idle. That is only the idle means that is only in our mind, right? We can only think about it, but we can't implement it, right? So this is a small portion of Ottoman Empire, okay? And Mughal Empire I already explained. So we have these two great empires, that is Mughal Empire as well as Ottoman Empire. These are parallel. Why they are parallel? Because one part of world or a small one part of world is governed by Mughal as well as another part of governed by this Ottoman. Like they cover almost Europe as well as Africa, right? So Ottoman Empire was huge empire, as we can say, right? So this is all for this chapter, right? Thank you so much.